Manx Radio's Countryside is brought to you by NFU Mutual.
Hello and welcome to Countryside here on Manx Radio. I'm Simon Clark.
And I'm Kirree. I caught up with Jim Caley in the preparation of the Eastern Young Farmers sheep shearing.
I went to Ballykinnig Farm in Smeale to talk to David Brew, who's a mixed farmer, to find out how his silage and haylage was coming along and also how his stock was faring up with the recent prices. Well, Kirree, lots of farmers in the middle of haylage, silage, making hay, maybe a bit early for hay, but crops seem to be good around about.
Yeah, this recent bit of sunshine has certainly bumpered the crops massively after all the wet winter it's held in the ground, and it really has been the perfect growing period.
It has. Well, David Brew from Ballykinnig Farm in Smeale runs a mixed farm, and he's in the middle of cutting grass, so I popped along for a word with him to find out how things were going.
I've started cutting I make haylage here, which is sort of like an in-between between hay and silage, really. It's sort of a halfway house between the two.
Why is your preference to the haylage?
Well, obviously you're cutting it this time of year, before the majority of it has gone to head, and and the seed heads start to come through, which means that there's an awful lot higher quality there. It's if you try to make hay maybe this time of year, especially if you've tried to sort of push the crop to get volume, you probably wouldn't do it because there'd be too much moisture there, and if you get any sort of rain at all, it'd be quite impossible to make hay in natural hay in May, really, and beginning of June. It would be very difficult.
And it's incredible to look back 40 or 50 years, isn't it, where most farms baled just hay and then the silage come along. Was that a sort of blessing because of the Manx weather, really?
Well, I mean, I suppose the silage, the sort of the conserving grass with making silage came about probably as a result of science and knowledge, wasn't it? That basically if you'd get more nutrition out of conserved forage if it was cut earlier in the year, as opposed to sort of letting it go to seed and it drying out naturally, which it does. But traditionally, a lot of hay wouldn't be made till mid-July, and the grass will have lost a lot of its natural moisture by then. The ground underneath will have been quite dry, so it may have only taken maybe 4 or 5 days to make hay. Especially if you had very hot weather. But the downside, so it would be easy to make, but the downside of it would be that it wouldn't have very, very much feeding value.
What about the sort of crops you're looking at? I'm looking at fields. Obviously, I've seen some silage cut. I'm looking at the grass around us, and there seems to be a good amount of grass. Despite the weather early on in the year, or was that really before it all would affect it?
Predominantly it'll be down to soil type. Heavier clay ground will have taken forever to warm up this spring because of the very wet sort of March and April, and probably the grass didn't get growing on that type of land till well out into April, so they probably suffered a little bit for volume and crops, and they may not have even be cut in silage yet. But the drier ground, the well drained ground, it probably suited that type of ground. Certainly on the north, you've got a lot of land that fits into that category. So the north probably that wet March and April, it probably suited the crops on the north of the island.
Did you have much problem sowing your cereal crops with the weathers? Did it hold you back?
No, not really. Not really. I mean, it's one of those, isn't it? Rather than actually going on dates, you have to go on conditions and the seasons. So, I mean, if you have a late spring, there's no point in saying, well, I drill on the 1st of April and I'm just going to do it regardless, because quite often it would be absolutely counterproductive. And so you just have to be patient and wait for the conditions to be right, and generally it evens itself out. So no, even if you had to sort of wait out to the 20th or so of April to sow spring crops, you'd be probably still better than doing that than trying to put it in bad conditions.
Okay. Well, you've got a good mixed farm here where you are, David. Is there much trends changed over the recent few months? 6 months or so, price-wise, or which is better, which is making more money, if any?
I just think that most sectors, not only on the island but probably throughout the UK, are pretty well in the doldrums, to be honest. Obviously the last few years you've had very high input inflation, and obviously general living cost inflation as well. But I mean, agricultural inflation was running up into the late 30%, at its highest annually. I think food inflation was running something like in the teens, 16, 17, 18%. But if you then measured that on, if you like, product inflation ex farm, that inflation might have been down at 7 or 8%. So all you have to do is look at those figures and realise that basically in that period of time, farms and farm income has been squeezed. And that's something that's probably happened all of my working life, to be fair. I think that started to happen in the 1980s, where farm product price ex farm was not keeping pace with inflation, and as a result of that, to try and make a living, farms tried to become more efficient with machinery, getting larger, trying to spread then the cost of that machinery. Obviously there was the cost of labour because inflation was going up, but the product price that you were selling was not going up in line with that inflation. So basically you had to become more efficient to survive. That's been the case all of my life, and I think now there is a growing consensus across Europe among farms, and even spread into the UK and into Wales, that enough is enough, and when farms aren't going to just trying to become more efficient and providing sort of cheap food for the rest of the population, and getting very little reward for it.
But this is something, when we looking back, I know you, before we were recording, you were talking about an interesting piece that Harvey Briggs had posted, a wonderful journalist, and great to do with the Isle of Man farming.
And he was a very, very strong advocate as well, wasn't he, for agriculture and the Isle of Man in general. And it was an article that he wrote in 1994.
That's not long ago. Oh, it's 30 years now, though.
Yes, it is. And the headline of his article is Department's Plan to turn back the clock back to how it was 60 years ago. And this is when I think the Marketing Acts were maybe started to be looked at by government here on the
It's sort of
island.
in the mid-30s, would it then? Yeah.
Well, yes. This article is a memory that he has when he was growing up, when he was in his teens. I think he left school when he was 14. I think it says in this article. And if I can maybe quote a paragraph from this article. Right, it starts. 8 farmers with horses and carts trying to sell potatoes, vegetables and eggs in the same street in Douglas. Prime lambs taken all the way by train from Braddon to Ramsey and brought back again unsold, and milk delivered to dairies at less than it cost to produce it. Those were my vivid memories of life on a family farm in the early 1930s. A farmer's worst enemy was another farmer. True, they worshipped in the same churches and chapels on Sunday, practicing Christianity, but on Saturday they would stab each other in the back to earn enough to keep their families and workers for another week.
Fairly strong journalism.
Very strong words, but they were his vivid memories of prior to organised marketing, and it was those dire situations in the early 1930s that led to the Marketing Acts, and basically a form of unionisation of farmers, where instead of actually competing against each other and driving that down, a race to the bottom in effect, they actually collaborated with each other, and that was in essence the Marketing Acts, and to a certain extent, I see the island, and not only the island, but probably a lot of the UK and Europe, in some ways back to where we were almost 100 years ago. And it's funny how history does repeat itself, but very rarely do we learn the lessons from history. And I do see those history being repeated itself here on the island, because I mean the world is becoming a very dangerous place, and I think food security is of absolute importance and paramount. But I think until some issues maybe happen where we can't necessarily import all the food that we require on the island, maybe the politicians won't do anything about it. I don't know.
David Brew from Smeale there, with some interesting thoughts about the way things are going, and with that newspaper article that the wonderful late Harvey Briggs had put in the paper in 1994, talking about when he grew up on the farms there, 60 years before that, of how tough farming was then, the competitiveness about it. And I suppose there's trepidation that could happen again, the way things, how tight things can be.
That's absolutely right. Harvey, a great man for promoting everything around the countryside, and sorely missed. But the same, Jim Caley, we'll hear coming up in the programme, says the same thing. Is a lot of limited staff on hand to help to do these jobs, such as sheep shearing, but also every penny counts, and the value of wool doesn't have such a great place anymore, and all these real changes that are happening in agriculture.
Yeah, and interesting as well, we're talking about the times before the war there, the Second World War, when a lot of the foods was apparently coming in from America via the boats, and of course that with the threat of U-boats and submarines and things, some wouldn't travel, and I think it was a big eye opener for keeping their giving some sort of help to the farmers so they could be self-sufficient in a way.
Absolutely. The food at the moment has been so cheap, it's been so readily available, and it is so important that we look after our homegrown produce, without doubt, especially the what's happening around the world at the minute. Relying on global imports isn't the best option in my view either, but there's some great local produce here on the Isle of Man and some great farmers doing a sterling job.
You're listening to Countryside here on Manx Radio with Kirree Kermode and myself, Simon Clark. Well, we mentioned about sheep shearing and things. We had a lovely piece for the Isle of Man shearers a couple of weeks ago on the programme, Kirree, but you spoke to another man who's in the thick of the sheep shearing at the moment.
That's right, Jim Caley, always a very busy person, but always keen to put a bit back into the young farmers. He had some great times with them over the reign that he did in Eastern Young Farmers. So on Sunday, there's a great event coming up. Well, here we are up at Bolshugle. Now, Jim, you're getting ready now for the Eastern Young Farmers Clipping Competition on next Sunday, the 9th. But in the meantime, how did you get started with shearing yourself?
Oh, heck, I can remember. It's such a... it is one of them jobs that you can sort of remember how you first started. And I think I first started when my dad had an old... must have been a petrol engine shearing machine, and I think it broke down when there was like 20 or something sheep left to go one day, and couldn't get it fixed, and rather than fix it, I was left with a pair of hand shears to start clipping with the hand shears to sort of have a go, and that's how I started with the old jousers. And
that is back-breaking work, because it takes a lot longer than the mechanised machines we have now to do.
Oh, yeah, obviously, yeah. But yeah, there was no other way. The sheep needed doing, and yeah, I don't know how many I did. I think I did quite a few with the hand shears. I'd probably done a few previous to that just to learn the odd one once a day. But yeah, I think I must have had to do 20 one day to finish off with a pair of hand shears.
And what was your dad like as a shearing coach?
Must have been lenient or something, or put up with me, because like I wouldn't be as good as he was. He was obviously quite good in his day, so I would be slow to start with. And yeah, but it's one of them things you've got to sort of walk before you can run. You've got to sort of learn where all the corners are and what not to do, and yeah, by making the mistakes to sort of try and get better at it.
But in your dad's time there, Jim, wool was valuable. You know, it was an essential part of life to get the sheep sheared for the welfare side, but obviously wool had a true value too.
Yeah, I probably don't remember them days, but I think they used to sort of say that, and the value of of wool, what it would buy, the value of lambs, what it would buy, and in these days it doesn't, you know, especially the wool doesn't buy anything really. It's just, if you had to pay a shearer to come in to do it, and what you get for your wool, it would be at a loss.
Yeah. And so why is it important for you now? You're obviously giving a bit back. You've come through Young Farmers, many a late night held at some of these farms getting sheep shearing done as you as a young farmer, but now you're seeing it important to get the next generation learning.
Yeah, it's the sheep shearings, like you say, they were really, you look forward to them. They all, each of the 4 clubs all had their own shearing, and a lot of time it was like an institution. They were the same families, same farms you went to each year, and there was good prizes, cups, lots of classes to go in. And if you had a good night and you won a few quid here and there, yeah, you went home with quite a bit of money in your pocket, or you could spend it on whatever the popper was or whatever. But yeah, they were good nights. Yeah, even just to win the novice when I started was quite a thing, because they'd gone on for years, it would be a process of, yeah, it was the actual novice. But if you started now with a novice, you know, somebody quite good could win it straight away, because like they haven't had them for years, so nobody's sort of won the awards so far.
Well, that said, where do you think the sort of change came? Why are these skills not being carried on in the last sort of decade or so?
Oh, I don't know. It's in my days, people slightly older than me, I remember would have a lot of farms were obviously smaller farms, and they'd have a few sheep, so that's the way they would do it. And it's got more intensive, that you've got a lot of numbers, and if you're only learning and it's hard work, you sort of give up rather than sort of persevere. So I think that's where that's come from, and people have sort of give up, and they've got contractors in, so there hasn't been the young ones coming through behind to do it. And yeah, I think that must be where it's just fell apart with the young farmers. A few years ago there wasn't so many people to do it, maybe.
And like you say about contractors, you know, the Southern Hemisphere sends up an awful lot of contractors. They shear all year round, they move with the seasons around the globe. And I suppose now time on the farm is absolutely essential. A lot of the time there's only one person or maybe the children helping out on the farms. There isn't the staff like there used to be. So taking up the time, days working, chipping away at your own sheep, you'd bring in a bunch of 3 or 4 contractors that do it day in, day out, and it would be done a lot quicker, I suppose.
Yeah, that's like you say. It's the summertime. You need to clip the sheep, obviously, because it's warmer. But then summertime, your grass needs mowing, things need spraying. You know, there's plenty of other jobs to do. And yeah, if you can do it all in one day, it frees you up on some of the other days. If you get decent weather, to get on with other things.
Yeah. So what are you looking to have here at Bolshugle on Sunday then, Jim? Give us a bit of an insight.
Oh heck. I'm thinking what it used to be like, and would like to get back to something a bit like that. But things have moved on a lot, so I'm not too sure what sort of classes they'll be, and whether they can get the young farmers to dig out some of the older wards that used to go and sort of try and get some of the same classes back. But I think just see how it goes and see what we can do.
I think it's the opportunity side of it is what we see would be a great chance for them to get stuck in, like yourself, and there's lots of other farmers that are willing to coach and help young people through it. Learn it. It's a heck of a skill to have, and you can obviously travel the world with it as well. But like from hand clipping to novice machines, can anybody come and have a go?
Yeah, I think there'll be a bit of that as well. It's as the classes. I'm only going off the one I went to last year, and I think the Northern had one, and it was a lot like that. That you know, people were trying it for the first time just to learn how to hold a sheep and what to try and do. And I'm the same. I try to teach my children, and like one of them's like left-handed. Well, that's it's completely different. So it's a job to everything's back to front when you go left-handed. So yeah, I'm not maybe the best to coach either, because I can think, well, I could just do it a bit quicker and all, but you've just got to persevere and get stuck in, and everybody's got to start somewhere.
Yeah, and like I say, having that opportunity to come and have a go. What type of sheep have you got here? Are the easy shearing types of sheep?
Yes. They're always easier if somebody else is doing them. But no, they will be. They should be right. They'll be mules, and I think they've all been trimmed, and they hopefully, if they've got a pair of lambs, the wool will be all rubbed off on the belly, so they should be right.
This is it. Sheep that you would like to shear yourself, then the lanolin will be up in them.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, there will be a bit of that, but it's just to try and help out and just give the young farmers a chance. Really, they need doing, and I just said to the boys that we were going to the Eastern meeting one night, I said, well, you know, if you want, you can come here and do some. There's plenty to do, so let them crack on.
And that is it. They're offering out. Like lots of people haven't got the time to put on the shed. Obviously, having a barbecue as well, which is great for the social side of it. The time and patience that goes into preparing and giving the chance to do it.
Exactly. Yeah, you're asking me questions I don't know the answer to. I don't know what's going to happen. It's like build it and they will come, and let's just hoping it's going to be a bit like that. And yeah, I think back in my day, you knew what was happening. Once you'd been to your first one, you knew it was pretty much what was going to happen the next one, and you'd look forward when they'd all finished to go again the next year. And yeah, like you say, they were late nights, because in them days the young farmers competitions always happened at night. You'd done your day's work, and then you had all night, so there was no rush to go home really. And they were often 1 o'clock in the night jobs when they finished.
That is absolutely brilliant. And who was your biggest competition back then?
Oh, I sort of stuck out for a long time, really. So there was lots of different ones going over the years, and yeah, there's memorable ones I can't really say, but there used to be the class where the Open, when you had to do a couple of sheep as tidy as you could, and then the judges were always like keen to make sure the sheep were turned over and looking for any little nicks or whatever, and sometimes you could just fold the skin the wrong way so they didn't hear you. You felt you sort of won one over if you managed to pull the wool over their eyes, sort of thing.
No, that's it. But like you say, going back to your original comment, that obviously the summertime, it does get warm. It is an essential part of farming life, the shearing.
Oh yeah, I'll be a lot happier when we get our shearing in the next month cleared. It's one job out of the way, and then you can move on to the next job. That's exactly what it is. Like you get trying to do it traditional way. Get the sheep clipped now, and then in 2-3 weeks' time, when the wool's grown back, throw them through the dipper so that it'll keep the flies away for the rest of the summer. And yeah, you want to get it done early so you can get all them jobs done so that before the flies get too bad. Yeah.
And how has the year been so far, Jim? I know we obviously had a terribly wet winter.
Yeah, it was wet, but it's always wet, and at the time I was thinking the worst ever, but and somebody said, oh, when the sun comes out, you'll sort of forget about it. And I haven't forgot about it, but we do quickly forget about winters. And now the grass has grown because there's been more rain throughout the spring, which has helped the grass. And now all of a sudden there's too much grass, so there's other problems really. So it's from that point of view, it's been, maybe a bit of compensatory growth, and now we've moved from wet and waiting for the spring. The spring didn't really come, we've gone straight into summer, and now there's plenty of grass about. So
and how are the stock looking? Are they doing all right? Yeah,
I think so. They're mostly outside, so eating the grass and a bit less work, and the barley's grown well last year. This time of the year there'd been the drought for the month, which was good for the races at the time, but it wasn't any good for the crops. So if we could just get a little bit of rain, like once a week, or especially overnight, that would be fine. And we need the rain. Crops don't grow without it.
Yeah. No, this is it. But at least it sets us up in good stead for the winter ahead, I suppose.
Yeah. With it being such a wet and long winter, like we were, like most people, didn't have too many bales of silage left. So we need to make plenty to sort of stock up again, ready to do it all over again next winter.
We're creatures of habit, aren't we?
Oh yeah, if it's in you, it's in you, and you when you get a tough day, you think, what are you doing it for? But when the sun shines, and away you go again, and try and do it again.
And like you say, today a great day, and your young fellas coming home now to get set up for the shearing. Yeah,
that's the job today. The shed needs cleaning out from the winter, and so clean it out and sort of set gates up and try and get ready to go.
It's a great excuse to get tidied up, though, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it is a lot nice to try and keep on top of things, especially this time of the year. Like before you know it, like there's weeds everywhere and stuff. So try and get a few of them tidied up and things. Just routine jobs, just need doing, get them done.
There we go. That was Jim Caley, ready in the farm for the Eastern Young Farmers sheep shearing.
Yeah, it'll be a good time as well. And it's great, a lot of people muck in who maybe not have even the fleece wrapping and things like that. They get involved in it, don't they?
They're so important as well. But even making a cup of tea or bringing a cold drink is always helpful as well. But Jim Caley looking to put a lot back into young farmers. It's such an essential skill to farm and life, and relying on people from Southern Hemisphere to do the shearing, when we can learn it and keep that natural tradition going here on the Isle of Man from the likes of Jim Caley, given that opportunity.
Indeed, and it's going to be a busy day, Kirree, because there's activity at Orrisdale too, not the show.
No, this is it. We're hosting a Leaf Open Farm Sunday again this year, this coming Sunday the 9th of June, 10:30 till 4, and it's just giving the opportunity for families, general public, anybody that wants to come along and see a modern working day farm. There'll be sheep shearing demonstrations, the uses of wool with the spinners and weavers, also feeding the pet lambs, meeting all of the various larger animals, the calves, and we'll also have some horses on display as well. But also the main point is to learn how food is produced and how the farmers look after the countryside, and it's so important that we understand where our food is grown and how it is looked after. There'll be lots of people there also in attendance. We've got the young farmers, the Isle of Man Creameries, Isle of Man Meats, NFU, Southern District Agricultural Show, and the beekeepers selling honey as well.
Yeah, sounds a great day for one and all. And go and watch, if you get the chance, you got a spare hour, pop around and just see how the farmers do these jobs, and see how everyone has to work together and how happy the animals are as well.
This is it. Our animals are always grateful to see other people, but also we've got the tractors, from the very small vintage tractors to the great big modern machines that are doing the work nowadays. So you can see that old and new as well.
Indeed. Just one thing to mention as well, Saving Poor Little Jerby. It's an exhibition actually that's on at Jerby Church at the moment. It tells the story of the parish of Jerby in the 1930s, which obviously was transformed then when the RAF station was built there in 1938. There's loads to see there. It's open 10 a.m. till 4 p.m. Until the 25th of June, so go along and see that. And maybe on next week's programme I'll pop along and maybe get a chat and get some more details about it. Until then, from me, Simon Clark.
And me, Kirree Kermode.
We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.